great pleasure to welcome and introduce Manda Scott as the first speaker of the conference and of the summit. Hello, Manda. So,
Hi, Krista.
lots of you will know Manda, but I'll give you a very brief spiel and then she can afterwards say some more about herself if she wants to. So Manda was born in Scotland, and in a funny way, you can say she had two lives so far. The first, in this life, the first one was as a veterinary surgeon. But as many of you will know, she is now an award-winning novelist and host of the international chart-topping Accidental God's podcast. Manda has written quite a few books, but she's probably best known for the Boudica series, which we all read, and also she gave a talk about it here, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or so. But today she will base her talk on her latest novel, Any Human Power, which lays out routes to a paradigm shift that would lift us into the realms of being good ancestors, hopefully. And this book lays the ground for a future we'd be proud to leave to the generations that follow us. So really, we are thrilled that Manda will be talking about the concept behind the Thrutopian thinking and what it means in practice for each of us. And I think this is enough from me. So I leave the stage to Manda now. And yeah, welcome, Manda. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and particularly to be opening. So thank you all for coming along on your Saturday morning. I am just going to chime. It helps me to ground and it may help you to ground. So if you'd like to just send roots down into the earth in whatever way you do that works for you, and just perhaps close your eyes and let the chime draw your roots into the earth and your connection up to the heights of the sky. Okay. So, yes, as Krista says, if you've got questions, put them in the chat. I can't actually see the chat at the moment. I'm not going to open it so I don't get distracted, but Krista will ask if there's anything going along. My plan is that we stop at about 1:30, whatever hour it is in your time zone, and we have time for questions then. But if there's something urgent, then please flag it and Krista can just unmute and ask. So, I am guessing that quite a lot of you probably know the Boudica books and that fewer of you know Any Human Power. What would be really useful, actually, I am going to undo the chat, is how many of you listen to the podcast and know already the kind of origin story of Any Human Power? Can you just put a yes in the chat if that's completely known to you? Because if we get the majority of that, then cool. Okay, so we've got plenty. All right, good, that's enough. All right, so, okay, we've got Philippe. All right, for Philip, very, very briefly, I was a novelist for 20 years. I went to Schumacher and did the Masters in Regenerative Economics. I really got to grips with, first of all, the extent to which we're being lied to in our current system, and the breadth and the depth of the meta crisis, and the fact that we do have an entire solution set. We're just not actually implementing it. That the issues are not issues of systems thinking as much as they are issues of narrative shift. We are still locked in the old paradigm. And I got to grips with system thinking, and particularly one of the things that really struck me, of many, many things that struck me, was Donella Meadows' Levers of Change. And she was asked one day, Donella Meadows was a genius, she's dead now. She was really very switched on and really got everything in terms of connection with the more than human world. And somebody said, so what are the levers of change? And basically on the back of an envelope, she wrote 12. And at the bottom are doing things that governments do, like, changing the tax laws a little bit, shifting the parameters of the existing system. And she top them up, and second to top was changing the paradigm, and the top was abandon all paradigms. And I managed to forget the top one for most of the next 6, 7 years. But I thought, shifting the paradigm, we can do that. And I came home and I set up the podcast and I started the Accidental Gods membership. And then partway through lockdown, I was leading I teach shamanic studies. I was leading something online because lockdown, and I had a set of visions, very clear text visions, that led me to sit on the hill on the land that I live on in a particular frame of mind every night as the sun goes down for at least an hour. That was the instruction. There was a whole bunch of other stuff we don't need to go into. And it was July, it was lovely. And by the 9th of August, I had the first scene and 3 successive scenes through the book of what became this. And the instruction that, 2 instructions. One is, whatever you do now, you have to write. And I genuinely thought I'd given up writing. I wasn't, it was too slow. Doesn't work. You have to write a book that leads us through, because by then I'd been doing the podcast for 2.5 years and I'd been talking to someone every single week who was part of the solution set. But nobody was pulling that story together to make a coherent narrative. And that I needed to do that. And lots of other people needed to do it too. So I started writing the book on the 9th of August, and I started setting up with Faith, with my lovely wife, who's very long suffering. I come down off the hill and go, this is what we need to do. And she doesn't say, please stop loading other things on me. She goes, okay, we'll do that. And she does all the design and the tech, which she's not very fond of, but she does it much better than I do. I break things if I try and do these. And we set up the Thrutopia masterclass, and it didn't have a name to begin with. I was phoning around people I knew saying, would you come and speak? I want to do something, because this is not a problem of creative writing. It's a problem of creative writers not having the data set. They don't know what to say. They don't know what's possible. They don't actually, most of them, know where we are, because the dominant paradigm is still telling us that if we all buy electric vehicles and recycle a bit better, everything will be fine, which is wholly untrue. And I'm guessing if you're already here, you know this is the case. Donella Meadows. Can I put that in the chat? Does someone who knows it put that in the chat for Paul, please? Look up Donella Meadows. There we go. Levers of Change. It's amazing stuff. And I rang Rupert Reed, who'd been on the podcast a number of times by that point. He was at that point a professor of philosophy at UEA, and invited him to this thing that I'd set up. It was going to run for 6 months, every alternate Sunday. Actually, we did more than that, and bring in somebody each time, have an hour of them talking, and then an hour of all of the gathered writers processing this stuff and integrating it into what we do. And I said to Rupert, we haven't got a title yet, but I'll think of something. Here are my options. He went, no, what you're writing is Thrutopia. And I will write that in the chat, because it's not spelt how you might think. And he had written a paper in the Huffington Post in 2017. And if you Google it, you'll find it. And so with his permission, we borrowed the name Thrutopia. And almost instantly, his definition of Thrutopia and my definition of Thrutopia had diverged a little bit, but he's still a really good friend, and we still sit on platforms and talk about it. So here we go. Let's establish some really stable baselines. The current system is not broken. The current system is doing exactly what it is designed to do, which is to perpetuate the system. The system is not fit for purpose. If that purpose is the continuation of complex life on Earth in this particular iteration. We are right at the edge of extinction. So one of the other things I learned at college at Schumacher was Ilya Prigoghine's concept that he was a really early systems thinker. He was a Nobel Prize-winning nuclear chemist, but he was a really good systems thinker. And he wrote a paper in the 30s saying when any system reaches maximal complexity, it hits a bifurcation point. And it has 2 choices. It either collapses into chaos and extinction, or it emerges into a new system. And the point of a new system is that it is wholly unpredictable from the perspective of the previous system. If you can see where you're going, it's not a new system. You're just painting the wheels on the bus a different color. However, if we are at that bifurcation, and I am absolutely certain that we are, we have everything that we do energetically makes a difference to the world. And our paradigm is denying that energy is a thing largely, or that what we do energetically can make a difference. And that's what I want to talk about today. One of the things I want to anchor in, which you will be familiar with if you listen to the podcast, but let's again state this really succinctly, is I'm running at the moment with Francis Weller's. Somebody is not muted. Can we all mute, please? Francis Weller is a trauma therapist who works with Patrice Malidoma-Somé, and Patrice Malidoma-Somé wrote the book of Water and the Spirit, which is very much worth reading. And he influenced Weller, and together they've evolved this concept of trauma culture and initiation culture. And the initiation culture is our birthright. It's all of human history, 300,000 years of human evolution, and way before it, I am sure. And any actual, genuine indigenous culture around the world that is still connected to the web of life, because that's the definition. Weller's definition is that an initiation culture, the individuals within it undergo episodic, intermittent, contained encounters with death. And that containment is held by the elders and the wise people. Just because you're old doesn't necessarily mean you're wise, but in initiation cultures you often are. The community, but most by the web of life, by the more than human world. The individual reaches the edge of themselves where death is probable, not just possible, it's likely, and they have to ask for help in order to survive. And they ask for help knowing that they can, knowing that help exists of the web of life. And if they're able to ask for help and receive that help, which is always given, and act on it, bring it into being, then they survive. And if they don't, then they don't. And many years ago, I was offered a shamanic apprenticeship with someone, and the baseline was it's 12 to 20 years, and if you're still alive at the end of it, then you passed, but the pass rate is not very high. So this is still the case. Let's not go down that rabbit hole, it's quite long and deep. So, initiation cultures, if an individual emerges from that contained encounter with death, they come back with a stronger sense of self. They come back knowing that they are an integral part of the web of life, that if they ask for help, the help will be given. And it's a reciprocal thing. It's not just take, give me help. It's I am now taking my place as a conscious node in the web of life, consciously conscious, self-conscious. And my job then, my beingness, is to keep asking, what do you want of me, of the web, and being fluid enough to be able to respond to that, whatever it is. And it may not be the same today as it was yesterday, and it will almost not be the same tomorrow. But that fluidity and the constant asking and the being an integral part is what an initiation culture embodies. By contrast, the trauma culture, which is most of our culture, I would suspect probably not the majority of the people on this call, but the majority of the people setting the dominant paradigm narratives, we don't have that contained encounter with death. We don't have the elders. We don't have the knowing of being part of the web of life in the way that is not just ahead thinking. There are people now who will say, we need to be more connected to nature. And even that language is a disconnect, as if nature were a thing out there. As again, I've said on the podcast a lot, there's a really interesting book called Hospicing Modernity, which I think is really well worth reading. It's by Vanessa Andriotti, but for reasons that escape me, that's not what she's called on the cover. She's called Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. But if you look up Hospicing Modernity, you will find it. She's Brazilian, she's part indigenous, part German. Her indigenous grandfather told her that the core trauma of colonization was not the stealing of the land and the genocide. These are both terrible. They're both extremely traumatic, but they're not the core trauma. They are epiphenomena of the core trauma, which is the belief in separability. In our culture, the trauma culture, whatever it is that separated our connection to the web of life, we have grown up being told that we are separate. and with a completely different value set. Our value set is climb up the pile, see, want, take. Who dies with the most toys wins, and it doesn't matter who you destroy on the way to gathering the most toys. We are seeing this now in real time at its, probably not at its nastiest, but in a version of nastiness that we haven't seen so overtly for quite a while, certainly not in our lifetimes. It doesn't mean it hasn't been nasty behind the scenes, it hasn't been so obviously corrupt and so obviously designed simply to amass value as demonstrated by finance to the top. So our culture lacks, we don't have the contained encounters with death. We just have encounters with death that are traumatic because there's no containment and there's no sense of holding by the elders and the ancestors and the adults, or the adults and the elders. And so our traumas just stack until they overflow. And we have a complete epidemic, not just of what we define as mental illness, but a total meaning crisis in our paradigm. We don't know what we're for. And back when I was at Schumacher and we had to do a term paper each term. First term, we were looking at all of the different variants of what economics was, and here's traditional economics, and here's Chicago School neoliberal economics, and here's Buddhist economics, and all of the other economics. And because I was there, somebody said, here's shamanic economics. And shamanic economics was, we're going to build a dam, so we go and do a ceremony by the river to placate the river. And that is not shamanic economics, people. So I did my term paper on what is shamanic economics, and I was doing journeys and dreams. And what I did towards the end, I came back up to Shropshire and I went out and walked the dog. And my spiritual practice at that point was that I invite in the gods and the guides that I work with, so that they are seeing through my eyes and hearing through my ears, and I am seeing them seeing through my eyes and hearing through my ears, and I'm walking along going, okay, so what is shamanic economics? And I come around the bend of where I was walking, and there's the god standing in the path saying, you're asking the wrong question. Which was sad because this was Friday and I had to hand in on Monday. Okay, so what's the right question? And the right question is, what are we here for? What is humanity here for? You will not find a system of value exchange until you know why we are here. So that became my question for the rest of my life, and it still is. And my answer at the moment is, we are here to be the best ancestors we can possibly be. So that when we do, I'm not going to have time to do it here, but I publish it on the website, on the podcast, a 7 generations meditation. So it goes we take us way back to before the Big Bang, and then forward another 7 generations, and look in the eye of somebody there and go, are you proud of us? Did we do okay? Are you so proud of what we left you that it has enabled you to have a flourishing life where you thrive in a community that is an integral part of the web of life? And if the answer to that is no, then what do I need to change in my life to make that answer yes? And I would say nothing else matters now. For me, nothing else matters now. It may matter for you, you may have a different reason for being, but for me, that is the only thing that matters. If I stand in the morning and do my morning ceremony, connect with the generations that went before and the generations not yet born, and ask for the wisdom of both to inform the present, what does that feel like? What do I need to know from those who have been all the way back till we were hydrogen boiling in the sun, and forward as far as humanity can ever go? What do I need to know to play my part in the emerging hyper complex system that is the web of life at this moment? So if that's the case, and if it is the case, and I believe it is, that our birthright is to be connected nodes of the web of life, how do we build that connection? How do we who have been domesticated out of it refind in one lifetime? We don't have time to die and be reborn and come back and learn a bit better. That's not a thing. We have to do it now. We basically have to do it, I would say, before the end of this decade. We are in a very, very short time frame, because because biophysical reality is what it is. And yet, emergence from complex systems is a thing. We cannot predict where we're going. We can look at the science and say, look, the AMOC is very likely going to switch off, at which point Glasgow is at the same latitude as Moscow, and we are not prepared for -40 in the winter. Forget that it won't be very easy to grow crops. We'll all, the water will cease to flow and the sewage will cease to leave, and within about a week, typhoid will break out and a lot of people are going to die. And that's quite predictable. What we can't predict are the social emergencies. If we all commit this moment, here now, ourselves in service to life, what happens if we do that? What does that feel like? If I wake up every morning, open my heart mind to whatever is the web of life and commit myself in service to that, then all I need to do is clear my ego and my projections and my fears out of the way so that I can hear what the web needs of me in a way that is clean and clear and authentic and grounded, and we do not have time for projection. So that then becomes, for me, the big work, because projection is easy. One of my early shamanic teachers said the heart mind is very shy and it whispers, but your head mind will whisper. That's what it takes for you to listen to it. In our culture, we are domesticated to have the answers, to have to predict. Part of our trauma is our head minds thinking that they have to know where we're going and why. I don't take these steps unless I've told myself a story that I believe of where that's going. And up to a point, that's because we don't have the adults and the elders helping us weave stories where we listen to our heart mind, which is integrally connected to the web of life. We've been told that that's not a thing. Intuition is not a thing. You've not to go outside and talk to the tree because that's not scientifically sensible. So how do we heal, really? Thomas Hubel, who I would strongly encourage you to listen to his podcast also, and his work is really working strongly with a model which says trauma is a moment frozen in time within us. And we can thaw those frozen moments. And if we can heal, which is to say thaw, such that feeling can flow in a way that we are not afraid of, within ourselves, with our relationships with each other, then without necessarily taking the risk of working with specific ancestors, which I think our culture is not very good at, that's a whole other conversation, we can begin to heal the ancestral lines. So I work every morning, again, when I do my morning ceremony, I greet my blood lineage and my spirit lineage, and I greet representations of both my parents, not necessarily them exactly, as fully realized human beings. And I invite them then to greet their parents as fully realized human beings, and theirs, and theirs, and theirs, all the way back up the generations till we were hydrogen boiling in the sun. Sending that awe and wonder and gratitude and respect back up the lines. And that doesn't mean I've necessarily healed all of the stuff inside that I acquired in 60 odd years of living in this culture and being raised in a averagely dysfunctional family. But it means that I can respect the representation of fully realized adults as my parents and see them as elders. And that then allows me to begin to connect to the elders inside, because exactly as I said before, we have 5, 6, 7 years to grow up and become the elders that our culture needs. I am leaning quite a lot, but not entirely, into Bill Plotkin's concept. He sees every human as having 4 stages of internal evolution: childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and elderhood. And in his view, our culture is locked in early adolescence. So he sees 2 parts. So there's 8. Within those 4, each one is split into 2. So he thinks we get through early childhood, late childhood, early adolescence, and then we stop. That most of our culture dies. You get old and you die still in early adolescence, where our triggers are right in the surface. And we need to prove ourselves constantly. And we're there to win the races, and it doesn't really matter who we tread on the way. And that's okay if it's an evolutionary space and it's held by adults and elders who can go, okay, now might be the time to step beyond that. It's okay, you've won a few races, we're all very proud of your capacity to climb trees, and now you need to grow up a bit more. And what happens in our culture when we don't have the adults and the elders doing that? When our system elevates the dark triad of narcissism, psychopathy, and raw cunning, and some people add in sadism, to the top. There's another very wonderful book that I think everyone should read called The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber and David Wengrow, where they really look in detail at indigenous cultures and the social technologies that made absolutely certain that the dark triad never got anywhere near a point where they could exert power on people. And we have a system where 71 million people in the US, which is 1 in 5 of the population, has just voted in the fascists. And everybody else goes, oh, that's not very good. We need a new system. The old system is waiting 4 years for the people we liked to get in is not a thing. First of all, there's never going to be another fair election in the US. Second, what we have is a system where we have the neoliberals who wave the pride flags and have the BMED Black Lives Matter badges, and the ones who are currently waving swastikas. It's still neoliberalism. It's still founded in extraction. See, want, take, consume, destroy, pollute. Founded in scarcity, separation, and powerlessness. It's not fit for purpose. If you only take one thing away from this, I want you to take away the current system is not fit for purpose. But we do have all of the tools to build a system that is fit for purpose. What we lack is the narrative that brings all those parts together and gives people the pathway. And this is Thrutopian thinking. So I'll stop in 3 minutes. So dystopian thinking is the bastard love child where the handmaid's tale meets the road and we all get kebabbed over piles of burning tires by our bigger and nastier neighbours. Everybody knows what that looks like. The problem with that is there's always a sub-narrative which says, and a plucky band of survivors manages to break through and continues the trauma culture for another few million years. It's not useful and it's not going to happen. I don't see a single way biophysical collapse happens, and anything. The point of a mass extinction is that only 3 to 5% of all life survives, and it's not the giant hairless bipeds. It's single-celled organisms. There's a lot of those. 3 to 5% of life is the bacteria in the soil, and a few fungi, and a few sharks swimming at the bottom of the Marianas Trench. It's not us. And that narrative is what gets people sending rockets to Mars, because they've just read too much sci-fi and watched too many dystopian narratives. Utopian narratives are lovely and beautiful and fluffy, and people skipping through the bluebells, and it's delightful. And unless you can see how to get from here to there, it's totally pointless. What we need are the actual narratives that give people agency and empowerment and motivation. How do I help my community take steps that work for everybody and are going to a place that we all want to go? Those are the stories that we need now. And trust me, that's really hard. Writing Boudica was hard. I moved on and I wrote, who was the real Joan of Arc? And then I wrote a whole bunch of stuff about World War II, and I had to get my head around historical eras I knew nothing about. It was quite hard. It was nothing compared to trying to work out how we could actually get through from where we are to where we need to be. It's not easy. I'm not pretending it's easy. But we need the poems and the blogs and the little TikTok videos and the op-eds in the newspapers and TV. We need the blockbuster binge sets on Netflix to be this, because at the moment they're basically propaganda for a system that is dying around us and that needs to go. We have to hospice modernity, but we can't hospice it unless we can see where we're going. And you have to give up everything, and you're basically going to be living in a cave somewhere, if you're lucky, off-grid, is not a useful narrative. The ordinary people who live in my village or the local town are not going to go for that. Sorry, guys, you're going to have to give up your cars. You're going to have to stop watching anything online, and you're only going to be able to eat what you can grow in your back garden. No one's going to go for that. But if we can build stories of connection and sufficiency and agency and empowerment, where we can move forward. I don't know a single human being who thinks the existing system is working for them, not even Musk. The guy has just fastened himself to the fire hose that makes the dollars. And he's still on ketamine every alternate week for depression, because nothing heals the wounding of the disconnection from the web of life except reconnection to the web of life. It doesn't matter how many dollars you have. So building the narratives of connection and agency and sufficiency and empowerment is how we become the elders that our culture needs. So I hope this makes sense. I was asked to stop at 5:30. I've run a minute over. Has anybody got any questions? Because yeah, I can carry on talking for, as you can tell, an infinite amount of time without pausing for breath. But I'm overworking social change. I think they have to be done together, Crow. Well, okay, no, that's not true. You do what's yours to do. So one of the things I learned at college, this is answering Crow's question, which says, do you prioritize personal development over working for social change, or must they be done together? So Joanna Macy has a really interesting triad, which I think is well worth keeping to, which is the 3 pillars of the Great Turning, which are holding actions, systems change, shifting consciousness. And I find it really interesting if you put out a marker on the floor, a cushion or something, in 3 places. Holding actions are this far and no further. They're the just stop oil, or Standing Rock, or whatever it takes to stop the destruction at this moment. Systems change are, how do we build a new system? What are the actual building blocks of a new system? What can I do in my community to create systemic change? Shifting consciousness is the inner work. And if we wait until everybody has done the inner work, it's going to be too late, because not everybody wants to do inner work. Not everybody has the capacity yet to understand that inner work is necessary or possible. Particularly in our culture, a lot of people are really afraid of embodied feeling, which is essential to do the inner work. And you can't bully them into it. That's not a thing. You have to come to inner work because it matters more to you than anything else in the world. And that then brings you to a point where shifting consciousness is your thing. I think it's really important. I think the energy that we bring to the world is the single most important thing that we bring. And I imagine everybody on this call and whoever listens to the recordings gets that. I teach within the Accidental Gods 3 pillars of the heart mind: gratitude, compassion, joyful curiosity. If you can live with those fires blazing in your chest so that you are utterly, wholly in love with the process of living, then you are giving that to the web of life. And at the moment, when I ask, what do you want of me? That's what is wanted. Feel delight in the world. Be in love with living. But, and I think the more of us that do that, the easier it becomes for other people. But I think there are also people doing amazing systems change who have not a spiritual bone in their body, and that's not their thing. And I'm not going to tell them that their systems change isn't good enough. So you do what's yours to do within that triad, I would say. When we did that triad at college, we did it at the start of the first term, we did it at the end of the 3rd term. And in both times, without thinking, I found myself standing right in the middle. But other people were definitely standing at one or other of the nodes. So go with what works. How do we rapidly remember and reinstigate our initiation cultures? John, I think we be them. I don't think you can't impose, again, exactly, you cannot impose that. You build the narratives of connection, coherence, sufficiency, of agency, empowerment, and motivation, and you do your own inner work, you do the healing until you are fluid, until your embodied traumas, until you are flowing, until the frozen bits are flowing, until your triggers don't live on the surface. And somebody posting, I don't know, Musk doing fascist salutes does not make your head explode. So I'm clearly not there yet. But you do the inner work. You become an elder. You become someone that you can trust yourself to be around other people, and other people sense that you are trustworthy. And that ripples out. Anything else that we can do to build communities of place, purpose, and passion is absolutely useful. But lecturing people into it is not the way. We have to have a sense of, hey guys, look, this is a possible future. You want to join me? In a way that everyone goes, God, yes, that's worth having. That's a lot better than the crap we're in at the moment. Nobody believes they were born to pay bills and die. But that's what our existing system gives us, and it doesn't give too many options. Start giving the options in a way that feels good, and it will do it. Francis, do you have any recommendations for sources of accessible information and community? Yes, totally. Who have access to financial resources and formal education, so many events, courses, behind paywalls, large fees and time. Yes, well, this is what part of the problem. What do you do if you've got no resource? Because a lot of people are simply trying to stay alive. And that's, I think those of us who have the privilege of time and money need to use it to build the structures that other people can join with. Accidental Gods is out there, and if you have no money, you just contact us. What we found was if we give it free, people don't do it. Some people who pay don't do it because it does require that you put your headphones on and listen to some meditations every day. A meditation every day. And people don't want to give us 20 minutes a day. And to be honest, if you haven't got 20 minutes a day, then finding a way to create that space is probably the first part of the work. You have to be able, becoming connected to yourself, each other, and the web of life requires time. There is no way around that. And it requires time to actually do the work, not just think about doing the work. We live in a culture where we don't meditate, we download another meditation app and tell ourselves that's meditating, and it's not. And I don't know how we get around that. We've got to get to the point where we give ourselves the time to go and sit with the tree or stand out in the rain or pray to the sun. Whatever it is that works for you, you've got to give it the time. So, and time is our most precious resource, and we exist in a social media architecture that is designed to harvest our attention. We are being strip mined for our attention as we speak. And learning how not to let that happen is a learned skill and is really quite essential. But that again has to come from the inside. So I think there's a huge number actually of not necessarily that expensive. Honestly, accidental gods, you need to come in and you have no money, we'll let you in. That's not a problem. I just think I haven't had a single person yet that we let in for free who's actually done the work. But even if it's just a couple of quid a month, that somehow is an investment. I don't really understand why that is, but it's been up for over 5 years now, and that's 100% hit rate. There's a lot of other. Listen, the Accidental Gods podcast is totally free. I am never going to put that behind a paywall, and periodically I do the ones where I say, and listen to these other podcasts, they're really good. Podcasts are amazing. It's like curating your own radio. So and most of them are free. It was Joanna Macy. So this is Isla Joanna Macy. If you haven't read Joanna Macy's Active Hope, go for it. And she has the 3 pillars. She's a Buddhist. Someone's done it. Okay. Okay, lots of people telling you about Joanna Macy. So much of the language is read as middle class by working class. Okay, Francis, I don't know how to, I am what I am and I speak in the language that I speak. So if you can find people who speak in the right language, go for it. I would like to believe we have 300,000 years of human evolution. Class is the last 1,000 years, max? 2,000 since the Romans came and brought the trauma culture to the islands of Britain. If we get stuck on tribal identities, whatever those tribal identities are, we're probably going to hit extinction. Finding ways around those are really important. But I can't bridge chasms to places I don't know. I can be what I am and I can offer. And if someone wants to join me in the middle, that's great. But me coming and imposing my ideas on someone who lives in a different tribe is not how these things work. Okay, we probably have 5 more minutes, I think. Krista, has anyone else got a question? Do you want to put up a hand and actually ask a question? Krista, how are we doing?
I'm fine. I'm listening, fascinated. Yes, we have a few minutes. We do ask people to put them into the chat because
Okay, rather than ask. That's
our
very wise.
experience is if people start
Yes,
talking,
they
like,
go on. Yes, okay.
yeah,
Yes, yes. You
but
get a statement rather than a question. That's really wise.
anybody, any more questions, please put them into the chat. We have got 5 more minutes with Manda, and it would be nice. Otherwise,
Otherwise, I could. There is a bit from the book that I sometimes read that I think says, at least outlines the problem. I could
okay,
read that if you would like. But if
yeah,
anyone's got a question, thank you. Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you, Francis. All right. So, for those who aren't familiar with the book, the main character dies at the end of the second chapter, having made a promise. And so, partly, I wanted the book to explore what death is, because I think our culture is quite afraid of death. I also wanted as broad a generational spread as I could get. So Lan has actually died, and then the character who kicks off the thriller arc of the book, because we're calling it a mytho-political thriller, which I made up, and it means anything I want it to mean because it's my word. Ha. So she was conceived on the night of, Caitlin was conceived on the night of Lan's funeral. So this is Caitlin at the age of 14 sends a tweet in the days when it was still Twitter. This is 2023, which was the future when I started writing it. And that kicks off a movement that then creates the systemic change we need. I still think this is possible. I think it would be very nice if we could do this before the next election, because otherwise Musk is going to buy the next election. But we can still make it unbuyable if we actually stop trying to play the old game and start playing a new game. I think that's really essential. So Caitlin has sent her a tweet, and they're all basically under siege by the paparazzi who are outside the place that they live. And she's having a row with her older sister, who is in her 30s. Oh, and so they all share the same mother. They all have different fathers. Elder sister's father was Swedish. Caitlin and her slightly older brother's father was Moroccan. So they're mixed race. They're all mixed race, but just different races. So Caitlin says, it's not that you're too old or too white, not even that you care too much. It's that you're too good. You still think there's hope. You grew up in a world where there was still a possibility that you'd get to old age and everything you cared about would still be there, still working. If Niall, that's their brother, had his way, it'd be working better and would be more equitable and more sustainable and more just. And you still believe this because it's what you've always believed. In your world, this is possible. My world is not like that. I don't have hope that we'll all find our best selves and make everything right. I know we're screwed. Everyone who can use Google for more than 5 minutes knows we're screwed. The climate's in meltdown. The oceans are turning acid and the rain is full of forever toxins. Democracy is broken. As Niall never grows bored of reminding us, we've only ever had a kleptocracy calling itself a democracy, but even this is being destroyed in real time by the sociopaths who have stolen control. The economy is running out over a canyon like Wile E. Coyote, and gravity is going to bite soon, and we will all smash to tiny pieces when it hits the floor. Social media companies are feasting on the young, and AI just went viral, so you don't even have to know how to code to make the bad stuff happen. Any 10-year-old with a grudge can stitch together bioweapons that could take us all out, and if the kid doesn't do it, the sentient AI will. She took a pause, and in the gap, her older sister said, if there's no point, why are you fighting? And Caitlin says, because I am tired of this. I am tired of being gaslit. I am tired of turning on the TV or walking into the village shop and seeing the papers lining up from a world that is dying, and the headlines scream about total trivia because their whole world would collapse if they actually let themselves know the truth. Because when the bus that is humanity goes over the last edge of the last cliff, I do not want the old white men who drove us here to have their fossilized fucking fingers still clamped on the wheel. I want some agency, just a fraction of time to feel that I can live my life outside the toxic, stinking shadow they have made. I want to breathe air that feels clean, even if it is full of sulfur. I want to drink water they haven't poisoned and eat food that's not giving me diabetes. I just want the world to be sane for 5 minutes before the end. So there we go. Call to action. Oh, Manda is reading from Any Human Power. Nick. By me.
I love what you said, or the paragraph you read. I want agency for that time, right now. Anytime for how long I can get it. It's beautiful, and I think we should end here. If there are 2 more questions, and if you want to take 5 more minutes, please feel free. No more than 5, because we're getting
Sure.
the next.
Okay.
If you
We need to
feel
give people a break. So other questions. Where do you stand on the idea that reaching one other person at a time is as much as we can realistically achieve? No.
no,
Nick, I don't think so.
not enough.
You can reach many, many more people than one. If all you can do is reach one, then do that. But the people that I am most influenced by, Thomas Hubel, Bob Falconer, lots of people, we need to be reaching people at scale with stories that work. We haven't got time. I mean, one other person is an R factor of 1, which is a 0.1, I think. In the end, 6 degrees of separation, but you have to reach them at a level that's absolutely core. And I think we can reach a lot more people a lot faster if we have narratives that everybody goes, God, yes, I want that. It's still possible.
There's one from Iara, which might be difficult to tackle, but worth.
Do you think that the methods you explained for
Yeah,
shifting the narrative with writers and the created can be copied to others? Yes. Okay. All right. Yes, we can. And I think there's a lot of people, the Aleph Trust, are doing this. There's a lot of people doing this in business. I just did a podcast with Jenny Gretva, who's doing it part of the European, she's being paid now by the European Council. There's a lot of people. If you look at the Dark Matter Labs, they're doing it. If you look at Opus in Sheffield and Civic Square in Birmingham, these are just in the UK. There are people all over the world doing this in different scales, in trying to change local politics, trying to change business, trying to change farming. The whole regenerative. I was at the Oxford Real Farming Conference 2 weeks ago. We had a whole day on listening to the land, where we brought in Indigenous elders, and Angharadwin led the most amazing, grounded, beautiful ceremony. And that was before a farming conference. These things are changing very fast, really fast. Jenny said, I'll stop in a second. She was at a conference where 3 separate men stood on platforms and said, we need to come from a place of love. And I said, oh, that's really nice, Jenny. What kind of conference was it? A green progressive? She said, no, these were Norwegian hedge funders. And I don't know what a Norwegian hedge funder means by coming from a place of love. But 3 separate men stood on a platform, said this out loud in company, and didn't expect to go into their jobs and be unemployed the next day. Things are changing. People want the ways forward. They just don't know what they are. So our job, I feel, my job certainly, is to let people know that there are options that exist, and here's how we stitch them together to make paths forward that work.
So we're weaving that web. Yeah. You want to answer another question?
I'm losing track. Pocket Project. Okay. Yes. Thomas Hubel. Yes. Yes. Yes.
We're
Yes.
there, huh?
Everybody's, yes. I mean, honestly, guys, I maybe class is your thing. Please, let's not get stuck on relatively recent. We have 300,000 years of human evolution. The web of life is out there. Labels are not, I don't find, if they're useful for you, then use them. But everybody's way of access is get out there and talk to the world. Actually connect with the web of life as your highest priority, and do the inner healing as your highest priority also. You have many high priorities. Okay, I think we're probably out of time there, Krista.
Yeah, I think we are running out of time. My goodness, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
knew it would be fantastic. I'm so pleased that you were our first speaker, setting in a way a tone. And Thank you so much for bringing all of you,
You're more than welcome. I will.
big facet, into this space. And I think I speak for everybody, heartfelt. Thank you again, Manda, and
You're
have
more
a
than welcome.
wonderful weekend. And stick
Thank
around
you.
if you want
I'm
to.
going to look at a puppy later on.
Oh, oh, okay. We
All
love
right, everybody. I'm going to hang around and look in, but I am going to go and look at the puppy. So thank you, everybody. Have a good break. Have an amazing day. It's Thank you, Krista, and everybody else for bringing this together, because this is how we change. We share our stories of what it is to be elders. We step into that space. We commit ourselves in service to life every moment of every day, and we let what that means evolve with us.
you.
Go for it.
Thank you. And on
Thank you.
these wise words, dear everybody, we let Manda go to have a look at her puppy and cuddle it with love.